Hi, folks. Thank you again for coming on to Back to Basics for Season 3. Today, we're going to speak with Reuben Swartz, and we're going to find out what he's all about. You know, we did talk about sales and how salesy should we be, how marketing should be salesy. Well, what is the intelligent way of doing it? And that's what we're trying to go and get into. So let's go on to the episode today on Back to Basics with Reuben. I'll see you there.
Hi, Reuben Swartz here, founder of Mimiran and host and chief nerd on the Sales for Nerds podcast. So I can appreciate the effort that Girish puts into hosting the Back to Basics podcasts before, during, and after the episode. He's prepared, he's kind, he's organized, he asks good questions, he moves the conversation along, and at the end of the day, he helps us all get back to basics.
How's it going, guys? My name is Girish Bali. How are you? Thank you again for coming on Back to Basics. You know, we talked about sales and marketing on the introduction, and we said, what does it take to go into basic when it comes to marketing and sales? Well, we do a lot of different things, right, when it comes to sales and marketing. And today's the day. Today, we're going to go and speak with Reuben. So whatever you want to know about this episode, you should listen to the intro. But if you want to listen to the episode, I guess we should listen to Reuben. How about that? So Reuben, how are you? Thanks for coming to Back to Basics.
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Reuben, for coming here. But before we talk about all the fun stuff when it comes to sales and marketing and what you are all about, what does Back to Basic mean to you?
I think I'm probably the person who needs to hear that message the most. I have a tendency to make things too complicated. I'm an engineer by training and by temperament. And as some folks know, us engineers, and sometimes in a good way, we want to plan for all kinds of contingencies, but sometimes that gets in the way of just getting basic stuff done or just getting out of our own way. So I love the notion of trying to keep things as simple as possible and getting back to basics.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again. And whenever you get a chance, I mean, you got 600 hours of Back to Basic episodes, which only goes back to basics. So if you need some training on that, all my episodes are there to listen. So thank you. So Ruben, when it comes to sales and marketing, is it really complicated, or do we make things complicated?
Well, some of it probably depends on what it is that you're selling and marketing. Some things are easier and some things are harder. But I think part of the challenge that we have that I've experienced firsthand is when you start trying to learn about sales and marketing, the resources you go to, the books you read, the videos you watch, the tools that have the most backing and that you're most likely to hear about, they're geared at the big complicated cases. The VP of sales with a 10,000 person sales team, the VP of marketing with a $10 billion marketing budget, et cetera. And there's a certain amount of complexity that goes along with those roles. But each individual piece of the puzzle doesn't have to be that complicated. So especially if you are working for yourself, you don't have to follow in the footsteps. You don't have to take the space shuttle to outer space for your sales and marketing. You can take your bicycle to the store. And I think that's a much better way of looking at it. I actually, I was a sales and marketing consultant, and the irony was I was not very good at my own sales and marketing. I was great at helping my clients. It was easy for me to see their problems and recommend solutions and so on, but my own stuff was a lot harder. And the irony was I kept trying to copy what my clients were doing. I was like, well, these are very successful organizations. Surely if I follow what they're doing, good things will happen. And instead, I made things worse because I was making things way too complicated. I didn't need all that complexity. I just needed to be able to define who my ideal clients were, figure out where they were, have conversations with them, and good things would happen.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again for explaining that. But then how did you train yourself, or are you still in training in your mind? That is that how do I go seriously back to basics when it comes to sales and marketing? I mean, do you find out how to be salesy and not be salesy? Do you find out that who are my customers, which demographic I need to go? I mean, there's so plenty of different questions that you'll be asking in your head of yours. Where did you start?
Yeah, sure. And first of all, I think just because something is simple doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy.
Right.
So I think the biggest thing that I didn't do a good job of, that I see people not doing a good job of, is not being really clear on who their ideal client is. And then you end up trying to convince a bunch of people who are not your ideal client to work with you. And that takes a lot of fancy sales techniques, fancy marketing techniques. You're often unsuccessful. It feels very frustrating, et cetera. Versus we've had those meetings where somebody just says, "Oh, Girish, I can't wait to work with you. When's your next available opening?" And it doesn't feel like selling anything. It's like you're the doctor and you do knee surgery, and the guy comes in with a bum knee and says, "I need to get this fixed as soon as possible. What can you do?" Right? And it's just,
Mm,
nobody wants to be sold, but we all want to buy what we need and what we want. So if
mm,
we can be clear on, hey, I'm the guy who helps the skiers fix their knees so they can get back on the ski slopes, and I'm going to spend my day talking to skiers with bum knees, that's going to
mm,
go a lot better for me than if I'm standing at the entrance to the hospital, accosting everyone who comes in saying, "Hey, do you need knee surgery? Do you need knee surgery? Do you need knee surgery? Your knees look a little shaky. Do you need knee surgery?" And of course, that example is completely absurd, but that's
mm,
what a lot of people end up doing. It's like, "Oh,
mm,
well, I help people improve their websites. You have a website, it needs improvement. I have 38 ways I can improve your website tomorrow. Why don't you hire me?" "Oh, you don't even have a website. You should totally hire me." Right? And it's like the doctor standing outside the hospital trying to
mm,
accost you when you walk in
mm,
the door.
mm,
And it doesn't necessarily mean that the doctor couldn't fix all those people's knees, doesn't mean that that web person couldn't help improve people's websites. But we all have a million things that we would like to get done, and there's only a few places that we can focus. And so if you're trying to convince somebody to carve out time and energy and money and whatnot to get their knees fixed or get their website updated or whatever, when it's not really what they want to be doing, it's going to be an incredibly tough uphill battle.
mm,
Versus if you just work with the folks who need their knees fixed, or are really desperate to get their website updated, or whatever your niche is,
mm,
then it doesn't feel so much like selling. And for
mm,
me, I had Bob Berg, the co-author of The Go Giver, on my podcast, and he said, "Reuben, you don't hate selling. You hate what you mistakenly think selling is." And he's
mm,
correct. But at the same time, for me, it's just simpler to think of it as, I'm not trying to sell anyone anything. I'm not trying to get anyone to do anything on my behalf. I'm trying to help people. I
mm,
want to help people do what's right for them. And that could involve working with me. It could involve working with someone else. It could involve doing nothing. It could just be listening to somebody for a minute, whatever that is. And the same thing with marketing. I don't want to tell anyone about how great I am. I want to teach them how to do the stuff that I help people do. Right.
mm,
That's
mm,
where I get great energy. I enjoy it. I can help someone whether or not there's any monetary transaction. And it's kind of like going back to kindergarten, right? Like the person who's bragging about how awesome they are at sports isn't necessarily the person you want to hang out with. The person who's like, "Oh, Ruben, here, let me help you, show you how a better technique to catch the ball or whatever." That's the
mm,
person you want to hang out with and the person you want on your team.
mm. Yeah, Ruben, thank you again. And Bob actually came on my show last year, season two, and we talked about his
Awesome.
book and his journey, and it's amazing journey. And then I think he was a co-author of with John Mann, John David Mann, and he also came on my show. And we talked about his first book and his second book. So it's kind of a irony that it just goes in circles. Thank you for mentioning his name because that's the first thing came in my mind when you said Go Giver. Um, so let me ask you this: what is the? I mean, I saw your website. It's something to do with anti CRM, and that's a tool. Can you explain that if you don't mind?
Sure. CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management, and it's a class of applications that really became popular in the 90s and the early 2000s. And it, it's called customer relationship management, but usually it's more about managing your prospects and your partners, your sales funnel. And
Mm,
so this became really popular with VPs of sales because they really had no idea what their sales reps were doing. And they
mm,
wanted to understand what was happening. Are they going to make numbers this quarter, et cetera? And when I was a sales and marketing consultant, I would go in and I would pull data out of their CRM systems. And I
mm,
would sit in sales meetings and see how they ran them and how they ran through all the data in the CRM, which was often not very good, and so on and so forth. So, as an independent consultant, I tried using these systems myself and ended up hating them. And I couldn't figure out why for the longest time, which is now obvious to me. They weren't designed for me because I am the part-time VP of sales, the part-time sales rep, the part-time VP of marketing, the marketing analyst, et cetera, all in my spare time, right?
Mm,
Really what I want to do is create and nurture relationships in a way that feels easy and authentic to me in my spare time, because most of my time is working on actual project work, right?
mm,
So it's a different goal, different objective from the traditional CRM, which is for the VP of sales. So the
mm,
the whole notion of the anti CRM is for folks to recognize, hey, my spreadsheet is not quite gonna, it's held together with duct tape and bubble gum. I need something more powerful than my spreadsheet. But
mm,
gosh, maybe I tried a CRM, didn't like it. I've heard horror stories, they're too much, et cetera. So by calling it the anti CRM, I let people know, hey, this is going to be something that you can take beyond your spreadsheet, but it's not going to give you all of the complexity, the flying of the space shuttle that you're going to get with an enterprise system. This is really just for the independent consulting tribe. It is not for your sales team.
mm. So does it actually measure the forecast of what we're expecting for the next whatever months or years or from now?
So it does not do sort of the traditional BS pipeline reports because they're BS. It will show you if you have drafted proposals with numbers in them, here's how much you have that you can actually say, hey, we think these
Mm,
prospects want these things.
mm,
Because what usually happens in consulting, especially with independent consultants, is you're like, oh, this person seems really interested in XYZ. I'm going to put them in the pipeline for $100,000. Oh, this person's interested in something else. That's another $100,000. And traditional CRMs will say, well, they're at this stage in the pipeline, so we discount that by 50%. So you now have $100,000 of pipeline. But you don't really know that until you've got to the point where you can at least draft a proposal where they're like, yes, I want this thing. So
mm,
instead, what tends to happen is you get this false sense of I've got all this stuff all this revenue in my pipeline, which you
mm,
don't. And this
mm,
can work somewhat when you have a much bigger sales team and you can kind of average things and learn what the patterns actually mean.
mm,
And part of the job of sales management in those cases is to kind of see how real is the actual pipeline. But when
mm,
it's just you, I think the notion is you kind of get this false sense of security. And what you
mm,
want is to just keep talking to people up to the point where you can put together a solution for them. And at that point, you can absolutely see here's how much I've got in my pipeline that
mm.
has a reasonable chance of becoming business.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you again, Ruben, for explaining that. And I guess there's a lot of people who wanted to know what CRM stands for and what it does. And I think the way you described it is what I was just asking about the budgeting and all that. But that's a different story altogether. But thank you again for that. You know, let me ask you this: how times have changed when it comes to sales and marketing? I mean, you've seen the difference between back in the 80s and 90s and in today's world, right? I mean, we're all about social media and sales and marketing versus before it was just word of mouth or knock on the door, right? I mean, what are your thoughts on the change and the transition that we're getting into?
Well, I think the origins of sales as a professional field date back to when the sales rep, typically the salesman, was the source of information that you needed to make any kind of purchasing decisions. So they were an essential part of the process, regardless of anything else. And we're
Mm,
now at a point where we can get that basic information online,
right.
right? We don't need the sales rep for that. We need the sales rep to function more like a doctor and help us diagnose the real problem, because we see this once, they see it all the time. And if they're good and honest, that they can really provide a better view of the problem than we can of our own problem. And then they can prescribe a more effective solution, which could be their stuff. It could be someone else's stuff. It could be, you know, it's actually not that bad. You shouldn't even worry about this yet, whatever the appropriate thing is. So we're asking sales reps to function at a much higher level than we were a couple generations ago,
Mm,
when just showing up with a catalog was a useful service for the
right.
salesperson to provide.
Right, right. The reason why I'm asking is because, for example, there's a lot of people who's thinking this is that when we go to buy a car, okay, you can go online, okay, you can buy whatever car you want online, and let's say hypothetically you can get 49,000. Okay.
Okay.
But when you go to a showroom, these guys are actually asking us 52. So
Hmm.
online is actually, you know, a better price versus a salesperson. But then they'll have to honor whatever we got online, which is 49K, right? So we kind of cut out the middleman, which is a sales guy, and going straight to the financer saying, let's go and finance the car or whatever the situation is, right? So do you understand what I'm saying? So it seems like we're minusing out the sales because we kind of don't need it anymore. Or the company's already doing marketing because that's what they're marketing. It's 49K online or 52 on the store. So whatever you want to do. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, it's a mixed review, isn't it? What I'm just saying. But it's
Well, it's sorry. Go ahead.
no, no, no. Go ahead, please.
My wife and I recently, for the first time in quite a long time, we went to a car dealer, and I was reminded about how much I hate going to car dealers
Right.
because the sales rep who's supposed to be the expert at helping us with the things that we didn't learn online knows less than we do. And so he's completely useless. The only person who's helpful, as you say, is the finance person who's giving us crazy numbers. And then the irony is when we ask for follow up numbers, they don't want to give them to us electronically. They want us to drive back out there and have another
Right.
conversation with a useless
Right.
person. So it was an
Right.
absolutely miserable experience. And if they had provided a good experience, we would have bought a car that day. But because they didn't, the sales was actually getting in the way of completing the deal. Now,
Mm.
that's an extreme example, and there are some reasons that that industry is so screwed up. And I think there's a lot of other industries where we may not think of it as sales, but where sales is actually really important. And we talked a little bit about the doctor example earlier, right? When
Mm.
your doctor's prescribing a course of treatment for you, they're doing a sales job. They're trying to convince you to change and take action. There's this whole world of consultants and coaches and other experts, lawyers, CPAs, et cetera, who are having they're advising clients on how to change in ways that are very important. They are doing sales the whole
Yeah.
time,
I mean,
and I
yeah.
think that
But
that
Ruben,
that's the future.
Ruben, that's an example of a car. But let's take an example of a buying a PC from, let's say, Best Buy or some other, company like that. It's the same thing. So my question is that I think the sales, the team itself around the world. We're not even talking cars and laptop. These are just examples. I'm just saying sales in general. I think we should pump up the skill set so then it's kind of the same wavelength as a consumer or even online for that matter. What are your thoughts on that part? Instead of just being a salesperson and that's it.
Well, I think we have to redefine sales as I'm
Yeah.
not just giving information and taking an order or overcoming your objections and getting you to sign. You're a problem solver. That's the job of the sales rep in these days. And so, for example, when I go buy a computer, I don't need to talk to a sales rep. I can do all my research online and I order online and I'm all set. My dad, on the other hand, will spend hours talking to me and then want to go into the store and talk to somebody because he needs a different level of service. He's got different questions. He wants to feel the product and play with it and so on and so forth. So different people are going to come in with different needs from their salesperson, just as different people are going to go to the doctor with slightly different needs and so on and so forth. So we still need that sales capability, but I think you touched on something that's important. So I want to call it out again, which is depending on how good a job we do with our marketing, then we have to do more or less heavy lifting with the sales.
Right.
And I think the biggest thing that can help folks really get back to basics with this is when you're really clear on who you're trying to help and how you help them. And then all the other people who don't fit in that category are like, oh, I'm in the wrong place. I better go down the hall. I better go somewhere else. Then suddenly you're not trying to convince all these people who seem really hard to convince that take a lot of selling to close if they close. And then if they close, they take a lot of work to actually service because they're not really the right people. If we
Mm.
can do a good job with that, then suddenly the sales gets a lot easier.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you again, Ruben, for explaining. And I just thought of something. So let me ask you this here. You know, You brought an example of your dad, so which means like baby boomers, right? Back in the times, right? And I guess we're calling ourselves Gen X, I guess, right? So
Sure.
let's say if we become sure. So let's say if we become the oldies now,
Right.
okay, do you think that the youngsters are going to be saying that, just like the example that you gave, that your dad wants to go and speak with someone versus being online? Or do you think that we're already thinking ahead of the game, that you will only go online? Does that make sense what I'm saying here? Because it's like a cycle, isn't it?
Well, I think people need help when they can't answer the questions themselves.
Right.
And we all have areas that we can answer ourselves or where we definitely need help. And then there's a bunch of gray area in between.
Hmm.
So for me right now, like if I need to go buy a new laptop, I'll go do my research and I have no trouble doing that. If I need to go get surgery, I need to go talk to some doctors, get some second opinions, do whatever, right? Like I don't really know.
Right.
But for my dad, buying a computer is it's a tougher thing that he's
Right.
not comfortable doing on his own. And
Right.
you see this across any field. There are some people, maybe they buy a new computer every year or they update their website every single year. There's someone else with a 20-year-old website who hasn't talked to a web developer in 20 years because they had such a bad experience. They're going to need a lot of help, not
Mm,
just updating their website, but even selecting someone to update their website.
mm, mm. Yeah, Ruben, thank you again for explaining that, and thank you again for being a sport when I said Gen X's. So, so
No,
let me
I
ask.
think I'm Gen X.
I think so. I think so too. So thank you for that. So there's a new segment that we started on season 3, which is the rapid fire round. And then this rapid fire round, I'm going to ask you a sentence or a word, and whatever pops in your head, we'll just go from there. Is that okay?
Sure, leave it to the overanalyzing engineer to try to keep things all very rapid fire. I'll do what I can.
Okay. Okay. So the first word is going to be tools.
Tooled?
Tools.
Tools. And you want me just to say the first word that comes to mind?
First word comes to mind.
Hammer.
Okay.
Hammer.
Sales.
Helping.
Marketing.
Teaching.
Budget.
Money.
Doctors.
Sickness.
Website.
24/7 sales rep.
Okay. Social media.
Time sink.
Go giver.
Bob Berg.
CRM.
Torture device.
Forecast.
Prayer.
Consultant.
Helper.
Consulting.
Helping.
Skill set.
Practice.
Audience.
Tribe.
Baby boomers.
uh, need to get out of the way.
Um, Gen Zs.
Bunch of good eggs.
Okay. Uh, the last two is Reuben.
Um, I don't know if I should say sandwich or Swartz.
Okay. And the last one is back to basics.
Kindergarten.
Kindergarten. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for playing the and being a sport on playing the rapid fire. Hope you enjoyed. I didn't really, make you think too much there, but thank you again for that. When I said the word website, it's a kind of an interesting answer what you just mentioned, right? And it's a true fact, isn't it? Because I think it's a 24/7 customer service. Now, that actually tells me that somewhere in the background, the databases is getting updated over and over again with AI. So do you think AI is coming to a point that it's helping sales and marketing, or is it demoting it down? Or do we still have a long way to go?
Well, I think you made a leap there from 24/7 customer service, sales rep, or whatever to AI must be doing something. I don't think that necessarily has to be true. Don't think we need any fancy AI for our website to do its job, which is sales and service, to the level that it can do without us being there, right? And it can do that when we're closed, when we're sleeping, when we're off having a life, etc. And I think a lot of folks, one of the things that I neglected, so let's get back to basics. That's what the website is for. That's its job, to get you leads and to help your customers find the answers that they need. It's not to look pretty, although that's nice. It's not to have all the latest bells and whistles, although that's nice. But I think a lot of people get distracted with the aesthetics instead of what the actual job of the website is. Now, when it
Mm.
comes to I have been playing with ChatGPT lately. I'm actually impressed. I think compared to a lot of the drivel that humans write, it can produce similar drivel much more quickly and rapidly. And it's actually something that's caused me to think about integrating it into my CRM, not because I think it should publish things just at the click of a button, but because a lot of people get stuck, they get writer's block. And so the idea that this could give them a scaffolding or an outline that they could start with is super cool. And I think it's going to really unleash a lot of creativity in people. And I think the collaboration of people backed by the machine learning is going to produce some really interesting things.
Yeah, but thank you again for that. And we've been hearing a lot when it comes to the Chat GPT, but and I'm not gonna talk about too much of it because it seems like a lot of people are talking about it, right? But I'm asking you this. The reason why is because it looks like, are we overusing it when it comes to the AI world, when it comes to sales and marketing and business? Or do you think that this is just the tip and just the starting point of the new Gen Zs, I guess. I'm not sure.
Well, I think, first of all, there's been an awful lot of hype in the media and in tech circles about this latest round of AI tools. 99.999% of the planet has never tried it, doesn't use it in their sales and marketing, et cetera. So from that perspective, I think it very much is something that's coming, that is for very early adopters, but hasn't gone mainstream yet. I think
Mm,
there's a certain amount of risk involved, especially if you let the AI go unsupervised, right?
mm,
We don't know exactly what's going to happen, and there's certainly brand risks associated with what these models might be learning from slurping up data from the internet, as we've seen in other cases. And one of the reasons that I think the next play for me is, let's let the AI assist humans, but give humans sort of the ultimate control before anything actually happens, before anything actually goes live. It's more of an idea generator than a live conversational tool. Now that said, would integrating chat gpt trained on customers knowledge base, for example, provide better answers than some of the silly chatbots that are out there?
mm,
I'm sure it would. I think it would probably do a better job than some of the customer service reps. I think you could easily imagine using it to be interactive with sales, but you've got to be careful. Is it actually providing accurate information? And if it does it 99% of the time, or 99.9% of the time, or whatever it is, what happens in that case where, for whatever reason, the model generates information that is misleading or inaccurate or whatever, and somebody gets really upset? We're going to
mm,
see all kinds of cases where that happens, I think, coming up.
Yeah, thank you again. And you brought up a great point because the first thing came in my mind when you actually said that is the movie Office Space. He was supposed to give you 10 cents every day or something like that, and he got 10,000 per day. From that code. So if we make that small mistake, that you can have that, you know, downfall, and someone's gonna really be bankrupt within like days, right? And
Hmm.
so that's why I asked that question: that are we going overboard or under? And I think you're kind of right. I think we should not play with the numbers for now because I think it's still fresh. Am I right?
Well, I think everyone's going to make their own decision. And I think what we're going to see is the companies that unleash the AI most dramatically, well, some of them will have tremendous success, and some of them will have success and then fly too close to the sun and crash and burn. And the people who are more cautious won't be in the headlines, but will make better use of these technologies over the long term.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you again, Ruben, for answering that question. Now, before you leave today, how is your journey on Back to Basics, and do you have any last words for all my Back to Basic listeners and my viewers?
Well, I think if there's anyone who should be the poster child for back to basics on sales and marketing, it's me. I took all these things. I knew I needed help with them. So, of course, I made them as complicated as possible, which was exactly the wrong approach. If you keep it simple and you have good conversations with good people, good things will happen.
That's it. Thank you, thank you again, Ruben, for that, and thank you again for coming on the show. It definitely made me think a lot for a lot of different things, and definitely there are a few things that I've learned a lot, and I think I'm gonna knock on your door next time if I have some questions. And but thank you again for being here and supporting me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So, guys, we spoke with Ruben today, right? And we talked about sales and marketing and how it's kind of changed over the time, and what we're planning on doing. Well, others are planning on doing, and what he's planning to do is trying to integrate his software with AI. Maybe we don't know yet. That's just a plan that he's just talking about. But now, as usual, as always, there is a quote of the day from Back to Basics, and why don't we tell our guests that this is a quote for the day? It's not about having the right opportunity. It's about handling the opportunities right. Now, with sales and marketing, there's no right and wrong way. It's just opportunities. Now, it's up to you how to decide that. I gave an example of a car dealer and a laptop. It's up to you to decide which way you want to go. So, as usual, as always, what do we always say at the end of the episode? Everything in basics. Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Take care, God bless, and I will see you next time on Back to Basics. Ruben, how was it?
That was a lot of fun. Thanks.
I hope so. I hope so. I hope so. I had a great time. It's gonna be one of those days, huh?
Yeah, I like that rapid fire thing. That really, a lot of the topics that I get asked about all the time, obviously I kind of have some idea of what I'm going to say, and then you get to the rapid fire segment and you really have to think for a moment.
Yeah. Hi guys, thank you again for tuning in to Back to Basics and listening to the excellent episode that we had today with our guest. With your love and support, we do need you to at least rate our show, review our show, because it does make us stronger day by day, week by week, as I usually say on my episodes. And there are three things in this episode that it makes a hit for me, which is the content, the guest, and definitely the host. So guys, take care, God bless, and remember, everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, take care, God bless, and see you next time on Back to Basics.